This is the first in a series of pre-lecture videos on exchange rates for the course Global Business Economics. I'm David Frankel, a professor at Melbourne Business School. Let's get started. Between any two countries, one can define three different types of exchange rates. One is the nominal exchange rate. The second is the real exchange rate. Finally, there is the purchasing power parity exchange rate. We will define each of these in turn. We begin with nominal exchange rates. The nominal exchange rate between Australia and the United States is the rate that is quoted in a newspaper or website. It equals the number of US dollars that you can buy with one Australian dollar. For instance, in 2016, this rate was about 0.75. This means that one Australian dollar could be exchanged for 3/4 of a US dollar. We denote this rate EAUD-USD, where AUD is the code for the Australian dollar and USD is the code for the US dollar. We now turn to the second type of exchange rate, the real exchange rate. To calculate the real exchange rate between the Australian dollar and the US dollar, we first choose a basket of goods. The basket specifies a set of goods and a quantity of each. For instance, it might specify a kilo of bananas, 1 loaf of bread, 1 liter of milk, a box of cornflakes, and so on. It might also include other items, such as 4 liters of petrol and an hour of legal services. Usually the basket is chosen to represent the purchases of a typical household over a given period of time. Then we choose a fixed currency, say US dollars, and compute the basket's cost in each country in that currency. The chosen currency does not matter. We could instead have used Australian dollars, euros, Swiss francs, Japanese yen, and so on. The real exchange rate is then the ratio of the cost of the Australian basket in US dollars to the cost of the US basket in US dollars. This exchange rate is written E-real AUD USD. It's important to remember that the Australian and US baskets are actually the same basket of goods and services, a kilo of bananas, a loaf of bread, and so on. However, the cost of this basket in US dollars can easily differ across the two countries because of differences in production costs, taxes, competition, shipping costs, and so on. Thus, the real exchange rate is not necessarily equal to 1. So far, we have defined nominal exchange rates on the one hand and real exchange rates on the other. We now turn to a third type of exchange rate, which is called a purchasing power parity exchange rate, or simply a PPP exchange rate. We begin with a fact that is self-evident. The nominal exchange rate between the Australian dollar and the US dollar equals itself. We now use another obvious fact. A number times its reciprocal equals 1. Here, we have multiplied the right-hand side of the equation by two ratios, one in a green oval and the other in a purple oval. The numerator in the green oval equals the denominator in the purple oval. Both are the cost of the market basket in Australia in Australian dollars. Moreover, the denominator in the green oval equals the numerator in the purple oval. Both are the cost of the same market basket in the United States in US dollars. Since the two ratios are, therefore, reciprocals of one another, their product must be equal to 1. Thus, the end result of putting them on the right-hand side of the equation is just to multiply that side by 1. Accordingly, the equation still holds. The right and left sides are still equal. Now have a look at the expression in the red oval. We can simplify this expression by multiplying the numerator of the ratio in the green oval, the price of the Australian market basket in units of Australian dollars, by the nominal exchange rate, which appears next to it, which is simply the number of US dollars one can buy with a single Australian dollar. This product is thus the cost of the Australian market basket, but now denominated in US dollars rather than Australian dollars. This now appears as the numerator of the ratio in the gold oval below. Since the denominator is unchanged, the expressions in the red and gold oval must be equal. You may now recognize the ratio in the gold oval. It is simply the real exchange rate that we defined previously, the ratio of the cost of the basket in Australia in US dollars to the cost of the same basket in the US in US dollars. Finally, the ratio in the purple oval on the right is something that we have not seen before. It is the ratio of the cost of the US basket in US dollars to the cost of the Australian basket in Australian dollars. This is called the purchasing power parity exchange rate, or the PPP exchange rate for short. It is denoted EPPP AUD USD. Now take a step back and look at the whole equation. It states that the nominal exchange rate equals the product of the real exchange rate and the PPP exchange rate. This equation will play a key role in the remainder of this video. This key equation is reproduced here for reference. It provides us with a useful interpretation of the PPP exchange rate. In particular, suppose that the nominal exchange rate is equal to the PPP exchange rate. Then, by the equation, the real exchange rate must equal 1. The market basket is equally costly in the two countries in US dollars. Hence, the PPP exchange rate can be interpreted as what the nominal exchange rate would have to be for the two countries to be equally costly, for the market basket's cost in US dollars to be the same in the two countries. In a situation in which the nominal exchange rate does equal the PPP exchange rate, we say that purchasing power parity holds. In other words, the two countries display parity or equality of purchasing power. One US dollar can buy the same number of market baskets in Australia as in the US. Let's now turn to an example. In 2016, the PPP exchange rate as reported by the OECD was 0.624. That means that if the nominal exchange rate were also equal to 0.624, then the market basket would have the same cost in the two countries in US dollars. Now, the actual nominal exchange rate in 2016 was 0.744. That means that the market basket was more costly in Australia than in the US. But how much more costly? The answer is given by the real exchange rate. We can use the key equation at the top of the slide to compute the real exchange rate. It simply equals the ratio of the nominal exchange rate to the PPP exchange rate. This ratio equals 1.192. That means that the market basket that the OECD uses to compute PPP exchange rates was 19.2% more expensive in Australia than in the United States. This concludes the GBE pre-lecture video on exchange rate concepts. Thank you for watching.